This lesson is about solving multi-step linear equations. Prior to this, we were learning to solve linear equations that involved one or two steps. In this case, there could be one, two, or more, and we're going to focus on the ones that have more steps. But in the Minds On, we're just going to review solving the one and two step equations. Now, in the text help editor, you can simply click on a text box, or you can use the Equatio icon that's at the top of your browser to insert Equatio steps. So I'm going to use Equatio. And so in Equatio, you can click this icon, which is the Equatio editor. And in this case, we are going to end up repeating the original equation when we do this. So 3x, and I'm going to press enter so I can add columns. Come over to this fourth icon here, and we want to add 2 more columns so that we have 3. That gives us a place for the equal sign, and then the other side of the equation, which is a 6. Now coming down here, remember that we want to get 1x. We're multiplying by 3. The opposite operation is to divide by 3. So I'm going to type div for divide, and I'm going to divide by 3, and then I'll do the same to the other side. One thing you can do is you can just copy this if you want. So Control C, come over here and Control V, or you can just repeat the steps from before. Press enter to start a new line. And so 3x divided by 3 is 1x equals, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. And just to note that in the second line, because we were just doing operations on both sides, we don't put an equal sign there. These operations are what we're doing to this equation, and now we've got a new equation that's equivalent to the first one, so x equals 2, and that's the answer for the first. So now we insert the math. And what you may have to do is just resize that. So if you click here, it resizes it proportionally. I'm going to resize it enough that I can fit it underneath. And then you grab this move box and click check when you're done. So I'm going to go through and we're going to do each of these. So the next equation is x divided by 8. Now in here you do x and click the slash, the backslash, and it will give you a fraction. So it's what you use on a keyboard for divide. Divide by 8, and that equals -3. Now, when I'm dividing by 8, the opposite is to multiply. Again, I'm trying to get 1x, so start typing multiply to get a multiplication symbol. So we're going to multiply by 8 on both sides. Control C, copy, Control V, paste. If you want to see the whole equation, just scroll up. So remember that when I multiply after dividing, that's the opposite operation. So I'm basically canceling the 8, so I'm left with x. Or I could say that 1 over 8 times 8 is 1. And that equals -3 times 8, which is -24. And then we'll do the next equation. You can just start from scratch again. X divided by 6, or x over 6. X backslash 6 is equal to 7, so I'll press enter. Insert a column. and insert another column. So that equals 7. Opposite of dividing by 6 is to multiply. We're multiplying by 6. That leaves us with x, because we're undoing that operation, equals 7 times 6 is 42. Now I would encourage you to go ahead and finish those questions, pause the video, and then come back to this to see if you have done it correctly. Keep in mind too that you could do this on paper as well. Now there's these two multi-step questions down below. So looking at the first one, (9x) minus 7. That is equal to minus 7. First thing we need to do is get rid of that negative 7 so we can get the 9x, or the variable term, by itself. The opposite of subtracting 7, or the opposite of negative 7, is plus 7. So I'm lining up this number underneath so that they are lined up with one another. And then I want to do the same on the other side. Evaluating that, I end up with a 9x, because the minus 7 plus 7 is 0, so they cancel. Equals, remember you can use an arrow key over to do these as well, to move between the columns. Minus 7 plus 7 is 0. Now this is like our single step equations. We are multiplying by 9, so we want to divide by 9. And do the same thing to the other side. So we're left with 1x is equal to 0 divided by 9 ends up being 0. I'm just going to resize those a little bit. And the last question is 6 equals a over 4 plus 2. Six equals, or just 6, press enter. Six is equal to a divided by 4 plus 2. Now, looking on the right-hand side, we want to get rid of that plus 2, so we would have to subtract 2. So I will subtract 2 on both sides. Six minus 2 is 4, equals, I'm left with a divided by 4, because 2 minus 2, that's the way I planned it, cancel each other, they end up being 0. So now I have 4 equals a divided by 4. To get rid of this 4, that is to make this 1a, the opposite of dividing by 4 is to multiply by 4. I need to do the same thing to both sides. Multiply by 4. So that leaves us with 16 equals a. So a equals 16. And insert the math. So let's look at the steps that are involved in doing a multi-step linear equation. So when you're doing a multi-step linear equation, the first step is to take each side of the equation and make sure that you simplify them. So for example, down here, you'll see that this equation has variables and numbers on this side. And so these numbers, the 10, minus 10, the 4, and the minus 5 could be added together in order to simplify this so that this side would end up looking more like this side does. So the first step is to simplify both sides of the equation if possible. It won't always be necessary, right? But there will be times that you will need to simplify them. For example, in this first one, there's no simplifying that's required. And by simplifying, we mean collect like terms. Another way of saying that is to add the numbers and add the variable terms, right, to make them simpler. Once you've collected the like terms, that takes us to the steps of now isolating or getting the variable term by itself. Now, when you have only one term on one side, it becomes clear what you should do on the other side. When we have a number and a variable on both sides, we can choose what to get rid of first. So in this equation here, I could choose to get rid of the 3 on this side, I could get rid of the 6a, or I could do either of these terms on this side. You have a choice at this point. So the next step, if there are mixed terms on both sides, eliminate one term of your choice from either side. Now, once you do that, you will have something where there is a single term on one side. So I'm just going to scroll up here to these questions for a moment. In this example here, we had a number on this side. So it was clear that if we want to get variables on one side and numbers on the other, then we need to get this variable by itself. So we're going to get rid of this number, which is what we did down here. Whatever you have on this side isolated already by itself, that's what you're getting rid of on the other side. Or we could say that if you have a particular type of term by itself on one side, then you want to get the other type of term by itself. So in this case, we had a numeric or constant by itself. So we want to get the variable term by itself on this side. Get the term type by itself on the other side of the equation that is different from the one that is already by itself or isolated. So that's the third step. Once we have done that, we will be in a situation like one of these, right? So when we teach this, usually we start with these simpler ones and work our way up to the more complex ones. And the reality is then when you're doing the more complex ones, you work your way back through all the different types of solving equations that you would have seen. So typically by the time you get to the end, it will look something like this. It could be one of these. It's not uncommon that you end up with something that looks like this, where now you're just getting the variable to be one of them instead of either a fraction or multiple. In this case, there's 3 x's, so we need to divide by 3. In this case, we have x divided by 8, so we have to multiply both sides by 8 in order to get 1x. Then you multiply or divide, which is the opposite operation. To get the coefficient of the variable term to be 1. Now let's work through some of these equations together. So I'm going to start up Equatio again. And we're going to follow these steps that we just listed. So looking at this equation, we're going to enter that one in. N minus 3n. Is equal to 14 minus 4n. Now, looking at the first step, it says simplify both sides of the equation if possible. So in this case, there is an n and a minus 3n term here that can be simplified. So we will add those together. So 1n minus 3n, so 1 minus 3, that's minus 2n, equals, and there's nothing that can be simplified on this side because there's a constant and there is a 4n. Keep in mind, a mistake that people might make is they might think, oh, there's a 14 minus 4 here. But that minus is in between two terms. That 4 goes with the n, describes how many there are. So there's 4 n's, or repeated addition. That's n plus n plus n plus n. Right? Repeated addition is multiplication. So we have a 14 and a minus 4n. Now we're in the situation where we have a single term by itself. Now looking at step number 2, it says if there are mixed terms on both sides, So we look at this equation where we're at now, and there's mixed terms on this side. There's a constant and a variable term. But on this side, there's a single term. There's not mixed terms. So we don't need to do this step. Step 3, get the term by itself. Well, the term by itself is minus 2n. Get the term by itself on the other side of the equation that is different from the one that is already by itself or isolated. So we already have a variable term isolated. So the different term to get by itself on this side is the constant. So we want to get rid of the minus 4 using opposite operations. So what we want to do is add 4n to this side and do the same to the other side. When we do that, we end up with 2n minus 2 plus 2. There's more positives than negatives, so we have positive 2 left over. Positive 2n is equal to, we've designed this to cancel these two terms out to make 0. Minus 4 plus 4 is 0n, so we're left with the 14. Now we have two terms isolated on either side. The last step now, 4, says to multiply or divide, use opposite operation, to get the coefficient of the variable term to be 1. So the variable term is 2n. We want the coefficient to be 1. We're multiplying by 2. So the opposite operation is to divide by 2. And to do the same on the other side. Two divided by 2 is 1, so now we have a coefficient of 1n, but we don't need to write the 1. That's understood. N equals 7. Let's try this next equation. This next equation now is different from this one. Here we could simplify the terms on this side. In this case, we have mixed terms on both sides, so we can't simplify. Seven a minus 3 is equal to 3 plus 6a. Following our steps once again, simplify both sides of the equation if possible. These are mixed terms on either side. There's no simplifying because there's no like terms. 2, if there are mixed terms on both sides, yes, there are mixed terms on both sides, eliminate one term of your choice from either side. So in this case, I can eliminate any of these 4 terms. So I think I will get rid of this minus 3. Add 3. So I need to add 3 to the other side. That leaves me with 7a because the minus 3 plus a cancel each other. 3 plus 3 is 6, so I have 6 plus 6a on this side. Now what happens is I've isolated one of the terms, and that leads us to step 3, where it says get the term by itself on the other side of the equation that is different from the one that is already by itself or isolated. So 7a is isolated, it's by itself. I need to get the 6 by itself on this side. So I need to get rid of this 6a. So opposite operation says that I should do minus 6a. And then I need to do that same operation on the other side. So I'll put a minus 6a on this side. 7a minus 6a is a, and that equals 6a minus 6a, those cancel, I'm left with a 6. So now I know that a is equal to 6. And the next step is multiply or divide. Now once again, these steps will not all always have to be done. When I look here, I already have a 1a. So the coefficient here is understood to be 1. I don't need to do any more with this. I know the answer for a, it's equal to 6. I would like to encourage you to try these equations on your own before checking the solutions. This equation has an extra step in there in terms of the simplifying on the one side because there is distribution. And distribution is something you learn to do in grade 9, although some people may need a refresher on this. Now let's go through and work this equation right here through. We have minus 10 plus x plus 4 on one side, oh, and minus 5. Equals 7x minus 5. First step in our list, if you were to go back and look, it says simplify both sides if possible. So we do have simplification that can be done here. The constants on this side, minus 10 plus 4 is minus 6, and then minus 5, that's minus 11. Or you can add all those up on your calculator. You get minus 11 plus x. Equals, and there's no simplification because there's no like terms on this side. Now into the step where I have mixed terms on either side. So I can pick what variable I want to get rid of. Let's get rid of the 7x on this side. And just show that it doesn't matter which term you pick. So I will line up my minus 7x with the x term, because those are the ones that are being added together. Minus 11, 1 minus 7, there's more negatives, so there's negative 6x left over, equals the 7x and the negative 7x cancel, so we have a negative 5 left here. Now we're to the step where we have one term isolated by itself, so we need to isolate the other term that's different. So we have a constant on this side. We need to isolate the variable term on this side. We need to get rid of this minus 11. So we will add 11 to this side. Minus 11 plus 11, those cancel. That's 0. We're left with a minus 6x. That's equal to minus 5 plus 6, 11, and minus 5. So minus 5 cancels 5 of these positives, and I have 6 positives left over. Now I have my terms isolated on either side. I want to multiply or divide to get the coefficient of the variable term, that's this term here, to be 1. Opposite operation would be to divide by minus 6. And do the same to the other side. Minus 6 divided by minus 6, we plan that to be 1. So 1x is equal to 1. And finally, this equation here that has a bracket in it, seven bracket 5a minus 4 minus 1. And I'm going to fix my a there. That's equal to 14 minus 8a. So first step is to simplify both sides. This side here is already simplified. These terms are not like terms. That's a constant term. This is a variable term. On this side, however, we have brackets and a number out in front, so that's distribution. Remember, this means there's 7 of everything in this bracket, or 7 times this first term and 7 times that second term. 7 times 5 is 35, so we have 35 A's. And 7 times minus 4, different sign, negative. 7 times 4 is 28. And then we have a minus 1 out here. And that's all equal to what we have on this side. Now we still have simplification to do on this side. There are constants here, minus 28 and minus 1. 35a minus 29 is equal to what we have on this side. Now we're to the step, and I'll just go back just to review them again. We've simplified both sides. Now we have mixed terms on both sides, so we need to eliminate one of them. And it doesn't matter which one. This time, I'm just going to eliminate the first one there, which you could always do if you wanted to. So I will eliminate the minus 35a. So I'm going to subtract 35a and do the same to the other side. And once again, I like to encourage people to line up your variables. Sometimes I see students not lining them up and they end up subtracting constants and variable terms. And that can't be done. So I'm lining up the a's together here. And then on my next line, I'm going to subtract 35 from each side. 35's cancel, and as you do more of these, you get used to that pattern, and you almost don't need to think about it too much in terms of the math because you just know you're canceling. And then 14 and minus 8 minus 35. So that's really, we're getting more negative. So we have 8 negatives and 35 negatives, basically. That's 43 negatives, or negative 43a. Once again, we're down to this step where it says get the term by itself on the other side of the equation that is different from the one that is already by itself or isolated. Minus 29 is a constant. It's isolated. So on the other side, we want to get the variable term by itself. So we need to get rid of this 14. So I will put a minus 14, which is an opposite operation on this side, and the same on the other side. Minus 29 minus 14, that works out to minus 43, equals 14 minus 14, those cancel. I'm left with minus 43a. last step is to multiply or divide, opposite operation, to get the coefficient of the variable term to be 1. So this is the variable term. Opposite operation is to divide, and I divide by the number that's out in front. So I will divide both sides by minus 43. One minus 43 divided by minus 43 equals minus 43 divided by 43 is 1a, and I don't have to write the 1. So a equals 1. Now what you can do is try these skills on your own. The first activity here is called the equation code breaker. What you do is answer each of these, and when you get an answer, you find the number from the answer that you get for the variable, and the letter that you get then goes under the question number that you're doing. So you put the letter in each of these spaces for each of the 6 questions that you have. And then you can work on the consolidation questions here, which are a variety of different types of solving equation questions using the steps that we just went over. And then you can check back at some time for the solution to these.